Has this meeting been properly noticed?
The meeting has been noticed and posted according to law.
Thank you. And could you do a roll call, please?
Yes. Trustee Arndorfer. Oh, he's just joining. Trustee Baldoff.
Present.
Trustee Backhorst.
Yes.
Trustee Ursing.
Here.
Trustee Stinkelbrand.
Here.
Trustee Warren. He is not on yet. And Trustee Arndorfer just joined.
I'm sure Trustee Warren will be here momentarily.
Oh, he's just joining right now.
Okay.
All trustees are present.
Wonderful. All right, that means we can go on to item number 3, special order of business. 3A, consider MMSD River Park easement. We have MMSD representatives presenting this evening. Who should I hand it to?
Actually, if it's all right, President McKay, I'm going to kick this off and they will be available for questions.
Got it.
So if the board will recall, on August 3rd of 2020, the Shorewood Village Board of Trustees approved an intergovernmental cooperation agreement with the Metropolitan Milwaukee Sewerage District. And that agreement outlined the scope and responsibilities of each of the parties related to the Edgewood Near Surface Collector project. That agreement actually referenced some easements that are necessary for the construction of the project. And so your agenda this evening includes the approval of those related easements. On the line this evening, we have Bridget Hank, who is the project manager. She is an engineer with MMSD. And we have Mike Hirsch, and I apologize, Mike, I don't recall your exact title, but he works in the land and survey areas relate with MMSD. So at this point, I'm going to share my screen and just bring those easements up. And I will continue to talk a bit about them. And then I will open it to questions. So in the first document, you will see the River Park area. The blue is a temporary easement and is necessary for the actual construction process. The pink area would be the permanent easement, which would be the location of the underground facilities post-construction. I'm going to scroll down to the second part of the exhibit. Recall also that the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement addressed the use of River Park Lot C during construction as an area for materials staging and storage. So that area is also included in the temporary construction easement. And you'll see that the permanent construction easement, the location of the pipe, continues to the right-of-way at Oakland Avenue. Mike or Bridget, is there anything you'd like to add that I might have skipped?
I would just add that there is, there we go, okay. I would just add that there is on the far left of the diagram, a little bit of easement on the parcel that borders the river, a little bit of the permanent easement as the pipeline goes south into the county parkland, and then temporary easement in blue. And that's property owned by the village that is separate from the greater park parcel.
Thanks. I should point out that this area is the Oak Leaf Trail, and the project has a separate easement with Milwaukee County to cover work to and through this area.
Yes, that's right. And then there's a little part that's owned by We Energies there, this little rectangle. So we have an easement with them as well.
Can you describe a little bit of what the temporary, like what this easement means, just, just in simple terms here?
Well, so it's a temporary construction easement. It's for use of the area during construction of the pipeline and its facilities. And that's its only purpose. So as soon as the pipeline construction is finished, the easement by its terms ends. And the district will restore the property to the way it was, and Bridget can probably explain a little bit about that.
Sure.
Sure,
And
I'll take it
maybe
from
just
there.
a follow-up question, Bridget. Has this changed from initial plans? Has the temporary easement changed from original plans? Or is
The
this,
easement limits haven't changed, but the way that the easement would be used has changed.
Okay.
So initially there was construction access to that western parcel through River Park. Now we're coming from the south side of what we call the NS4 area and coming off of the Cambridge intersection. So we aren't going to be traveling through the park to access the receiving shaft that's on the west side of the Oak Leaf Trail. So that's changed, but the overall limits of the area where there may be some construction, storage, or activity has not changed.
okay, and then just my final follow-up, and I'm sorry, I kind of jumped in here, guys. I apologize, Trustee Bockhorst and everybody else, but so just putting like, we're big users of the park with the Shorewood Little League. And I know we've had conversations, and I really appreciate all the time that you've given to us in the past as well, and consideration for everything that we're doing down there. That we have a batting cage right here, and then we have our shed right here. And it looks like that temporary easement is going through that shed. Are you essentially just thinking that it's going to go around the shed, or will you actually have to, go through the shed?
Great question. We are anticipating going around the shed. So with the construction documents, there is a fence line that goes around the shed to allow usage of both the batting cages, the shed, and all of that area for the purposes of legal documentation. Putting all of those jogs and moves in it makes it much more complicated, but we do intend on having a construction fence there to make sure that the Little League operations can
Fantastic.
continue.
So that batting cage won't necessarily need to be removed, but I think in conversations there could be a time where we may need to remove it, or are you thinking that it won't need to be touched at all through the whole process?
We are anticipating not needing to touch it at all.
Sweet. Okay,
That there
that's
wouldn't
great.
be any disruption to the batting cage.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Trustee Bockhorst?
Thank you. So given this is a temporary easement, we're not, other than the permanent easement part on this map, I guess the decision we have to make as a board is, do we want this project to go on? And are we going to be willing participants? So I'm ready to vote. I don't want to take away anyone's opportunity to speak. We can still have further discussion. But for the sake of brevity and getting through things, I'm just going to go ahead and make a motion. Sorry. I guess someone else can if they want, because
I can make the motion. I'll move to approve the temporary construction easement and the permanent easement related to the Metropolitan Sewerage District's Edgewood NSC project, which runs through River Park.
I'll second it.
Yeah, I'll let you second there, Tammy.
Any discussion? Trustee Stokbrand?
Thank you. I noticed in this, it talks about some of the water from this will come from Milwaukee and some will come from Shorewood. What are the engineering studies showing? What amount will be Milwaukee and what will be Shorewood? I mean, I know you can't predict the rain, but you've done modeling, right?
Yes, there's been significant modeling done on this area. The majority of the flow is from Shorewood, with a small amount from Milwaukee. I don't have the percentages in front of me. For
Okay, so
tonight's
majority could be 51. So you don't have anything more
session.
specific.
Much more than 51, probably in the 80 plus range.
Okay. And then, so is there a plan? It looks like perhaps, will we keep that Edgewood Avenue, which becomes River Park Court? Does that stay open to the entire, it's a 2-year project, right? And does that access stay open, or is there an alternate way going to get back to the apartments back there?
The access stays open. So the project is a tunneling project. There are 4 shafts throughout the construction of the project, and basically the tunneling machine goes between the 4 shafts.
Great. And if I recall correctly, there will be some green infrastructure here, and to Trustee Ursing's point, it should not interfere with the shed and the batting cage, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from trustees? Okay. There is already a motion on the floor. Is there public comment related to the motion? We kind of skipped that part. I don't see any hands raised.
There are no hands at this time.
Okay. Will the slushy machine at the snack shack continue to be operational during this project?
No, we, unfortunately, we have put that to rest.
Oh, all right. Well,
I apologize. We did get our concessions going back, but the slushy machine was a fatality of that by way of the ingredient label of the slushy concoction. So.
okay, well, that'll be another grievance. That'll be another agenda item in the future.
We do have Pete's Pops though
Oh,
at the concession stand, and
Oh,
they
that's
are big sellers.
that's an
report.
upgrade.
Yeah,
And go local.
we're probably the only place around that has Pete's
Yeah.
Pop. So if you don't even like baseball, just come down to the Spectre Field and get yourself a Pete's Pop. Amazing.
Okay, all right. If there's no other comments or discussion, I would, all those in, oh, it's a resolution, right? We have to do a roll call?
Yes.
Okay,
Trustee Baldock,
Yes.
Trustee Warren,
Aye.
Trustee Stokebrand,
Aye.
Trustee Ursink,
Hi.
Trustee Blackhorse,
Yes.
Trustee Arndorfer,
Aye.
President McKeag.
aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to 3E under special order of business, the comprehensive annual financial report with Sikich presenting.
Yeah, Dan, there you are. That time of year again, we've got our final version of the comprehensive annual financial report ready to be presented to the village board by our auditing partner, Dan Berg. This is really an audit presentation, so I will really just turn it over to you, Dan, and hope all is well on your end this evening. And you can certainly share your screen to walk through the document as a supplement to what was provided to the board as an outline.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you all for having me. Can you all see the comprehensive annual financial report cover? Good. Okay. It's always a crapshoot for me. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to present to you, and I welcome any questions that you might have during the course of the presentation. Please feel free to step up or ask any questions. I've provided, we have provided a PDF of the comprehensive annual financial report, as well as each of the TIF audit reports and the board communications. So if you have questions on any of those documents as we go along, please feel free to jump in. I do want to report that the audit was done completely remotely this year due to the pandemic. We completed our field work in March remotely, and I want to compliment staff for doing an excellent job in getting ready for us. We were able to get the quote field work, because we weren't in the field, for either preliminary field work or final field work done exactly on time, and get the report in and out of typing on time and into your hands. Mark did a nice job getting ready for us and also being available for us to ask questions. As you can imagine, no matter how ready you are, we're going to have a lot of questions. That's our job. And some of the things that are most of the things we ask for, we'll review, but we also want to surprise staff with some document requests and whatnot that they'll need to prepare during the course of our audit testing. The audit is comprehensive. The comprehensive annual report is comprehensive, meaning that in addition to what is required by state statute and GAAP, We also include, the village also included the statistical section in the back and the introductory section in the front. So there are additional components to this report that aren't required, but are voluntarily done in the interests of giving the public and the users as much information as possible, and also to qualify it for the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting through the Government Finance Officers Association. This report has received that award in the past, and we fully expect it to receive that again. So nice job again. If you haven't had a chance to go through this, I will take you through a few pieces of it, as well as be ready to answer any questions you might have about it. But if you're new to this type of document and are intimidated by the size, because it's a very long report, much longer than any commercial report that you'd review, I would highly recommend that you start with the transmittal letter written by staff on letterhead. It gives a nice introduction and description, not only of the village, but of part of the audit process. That's in the introductory section. The independent auditor's report is the only 3 pages of the report that are truly SICKages. The rest of the report is truly the villages. And these 3 pages explained a little bit about what we're responsible for, what management is responsible for. And at the top of the second page, on page 2, I'm sorry, do I need to tell you the page numbers I'm jumping to, or are you okay with me just going to the PDF and jumping with the bookmarks?
I shared an outline of the pages you had indicated
Okay.
last week. So hopefully people are prepared to listen and verify based on that as needed.
Okay. Again, please feel free to jump in. The opinion at the top of the page is commonly referred to as a clean opinion. We refer to it as an unmodified opinion. It's the best opinion we're allowed to give, and it says simply that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects, the financial position, and of course, the results of operation of the village. So that's pretty much what you pay us for right there. The next section I just want to hit very quickly is the management discussion and analysis that appears between our independent auditor's report and the actual financial statements. Again, written by staff, it compares last year to this year, gives you some financial highlights, as you can see, and also explains to the reader why things changed, why this number went up or down or what have you, and gives you some real good explanation of the financial situation and the results of operations. So with that, I'll hit the first of the financial statements. This is the statement of net position. It's the full accrual version of the similar to a balance sheet in commercial accounting, but it has all of the capital assets. It has all of the long-term liabilities, and then it shows the net position at the bottom of the page. The net position is positive in all of the categories. The net investment in capital assets represents your capital assets, net of any debt still outstanding that was used to create or purchase those assets, net of depreciation on those assets, I should say as well. And then it also shows some of the items that the village is legally restricted to spend some of its fund balance on. So it has fund net position, but it's legally restricted to pension benefits, capital projects in the form of bond proceeds. And then library has a little bit of bequests, and then the CDA for its grants grants activities. The unrestricted is in a deficit position. That's very, very common with municipalities that have TID debt. In other words, debt that was issued, but there isn't a village-owned asset, capital asset to offset it. So we have a little bit of a deficit that has decreased in the past year and continues to do so as that debt is paid down. The next financial statement that I wanted to point out was the statement of activities, again, on a full accrual basis. So this would include the effects of payments of debt, issuance of debt, and depreciation and changes in capital assets. It shows here that the governmental activities increased net position by 3.5 million, and the business type activities increased by nearly $700,000 for a grand total of almost 4.2 million increase in equity, increase in net position. So if your constituents were to ask you if the village is financially better off this year than last year, you would point to these numbers here and say that it is better off than it was at the beginning of the fiscal year. The next page I just wanted to touch on is the governmental balance sheet. Modified accrual basis does not include the capital assets or long-term debt. So this is more on the budgetary basis. This is more in line with what you see on a monthly basis. And the fund balances near the bottom of the page are again in the order that you cannot spend them. So the first two line items are non-spendable. In other words, you've already spent the funds, can't be spent again for prepaids and long-terms receivable. Then we have the restricted fund balance, very similar to the restricted net position, can only be spent on various items for which primarily they were taxed or issued. Committed and assigned, meaning that the board committed the use, or assigned, meaning that management has designated some of these monies for a specific purpose. And finally, the unassigned amount in the general fund of nearly $5 million. That is not significantly, but it is above the village's policy by over 10%. So a floor of 30% is the policy, and it's up around 40%. The next page is the change in fund balance for the governmental funds. And that shows across the board positive fund balance changes. That includes the proceeds from the sale of capital assets, debt issued and refunded. There was a couple of refunding bonds issued during the year. So that's what the payment to escrow agent is. And then the transfers in, transfer out. But the general fund had a very small increase of less than 30,000. And across the board, we're showing increases for a grand total increase of over $5.6 million. The business type activities includes the parking, water, and the sewer sales, or sewer utilities. And at the bottom of the page, again, we show the net position, and we show the amounts you can't spend first, and then the amounts you can spend. The sewer utility has some bonds outstanding and some advances. Therefore, the net position for unrestricted is a very small deficit. Last thing I wanted to talk about on the financial statements is the operating income and loss for those business type activities. Again, we show a positive change in net position for each of the funds. And indeed, we had a higher positive operating income for each of the funds. That's before transfers out to primarily the general fund. There's a couple other pages I bookmarked just for your information, including the change in capital assets, change in long-term liabilities. I did want to hit the budget to actual. So after the lengthy notes to the financial statements, we have combining an individual fund financial statements, and we show budget to actual. And the general fund's budget to actual runs 2 pages from 84 and 85, but it showed that we had a balanced budget and we exceeded the budget by $29,000. So just a little bit ahead of budget. So nice job there. And last, not last, but second to last, I did want to hit the Wisconsin retirement system, since pensions are always top of mind with funding and whatnot. But it shows here that the WRS has historically been pretty close to fully funded actuarially. and again, finished 2020 at about 103% funded. Just for your information, I also bookmarked the non-major funds, showing the smaller funds that we aggregate and show the total column in the front of the report. There is a section that shows the TIDs if you're interested in how the TIDs did over the year. And lastly, this is the table of contents, so to speak, a description of the statistical section, which I find that a lot of my elected officials find fascinating to show 10-year trend schedules of the financial position and changes in financial position, as well as debt and taxes and other items like that. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about this document or about the audit process or about the other document, the auditor's communication to the board. I think you're muted.
I know I'm muted. Thank you very
Sorry.
much, Mr.
Sorry.
Berg. No. Are there any comments or questions from the trustees? Okay.
Trustee Stokebrand has a comment.
Okay, great. Thank you. Trustee Stokebrand?
So I believe the only concern you really have is our payroll, oversight over our payroll. Is that correct? And with our small department, that's, we just have to figure out some oversight for that.
Correct. And we have talked about this particular area, segregation of duties with the village for a few years now. And there are some controls in place that aren't, with the small staff, aren't able to be completely segregated the way a larger organization might be able to. And therefore we feel the need to point it out. And, we talk to Mark and Rebecca annually about, let's keep an eye out for any opportunities that might present themselves to further segregate duties.
Thank you.
Trustee Warren?
Trustee Stokebrand kind of stole my question, but I have actually a follow-up. So I've noticed this has occurred on the report for a couple of years. Is there a process in place just for housekeeping for someone to be able, like maybe a department head, to sign off on the risk? Because it just seems odd to me that we have kind of this finding recur, and we say, we're a small organization, we can't address it, we have other controls in place. It seems like either we should address it or say we've actively accepted this risk, therefore it should not be reflected in future reports. So I'm just wondering, from a housekeeping perspective, whether that happens.
Also for a housekeeping perspective, we feel as the board changes, we feel the need to make sure the new board members are aware of old comments and the progression of their implementation or lack thereof. I understand your point. We can look into further describing what is being done in order to mitigate any risks. Maybe that would be the way to go there.
Yeah, it just seems like if we've de facto accepted the risk, maybe, and again, it's just more housekeeping, but if this is something we've decided we're not going to, implement any additional controls, maybe that should be reflected in the report, just so we know that we're not waiting for it hasn't slipped through the cracks, or someone isn't just choosing not to take action on it. We've kind of we've thought about it and we've decided we don't need to, because of the size of our department and because additional controls are in place, we've decided to accept any risk that would result in this finding.
Mr. Emmanuelson, did you have your hand?
I did.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have been monitoring this, and we do have a lot of secondary controls in place to address the potential issues by the lack of segregation of duties. I just want to add that we recently took a broader look at some of our roles and responsibilities at Village Hall, and have implemented another control that should take care of this note moving forward. So we'll have to pass that through Dan next year, but we've we've restricted access to certain components to the person who processes payroll and given access to somebody who doesn't have their approval to process payroll, and that should really solve this. It's been a challenge to realign those duties because they need to be done on a regular and timely basis, and you can't stop payroll because somebody isn't available to make that happen. So.
No, and thanks, I appreciate that. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that any risk should be accepted lightly, but it sounds, Mark, like we're putting in place kind of other controls that address this risk, that allow us to not kind of, that allow us to say, you know, we're comfortable with where we stand here. And I think that just needs to be kind of reflected, documented, and kind of going through the process. So that was really the genesis of my question.
Okay, thank you.
To Trustee Warren's suggestion, would that be a follow-up memo or an amendment to this report that would give a little bit more detail to those secondary controls?
I could do that for you.
I think that would be great to have a record of it, and also with the new board. I like that Mr. Berg, you know, we are kind of level set and move forward. Any other comments or questions? Anybody seeing anything I don't see? Okay. Well,
I always like to remind the board that I work with staff, but I work for the board. So things should come up after the meeting. Please feel free to reach out to me with any questions you might have. I'd be happy to take a call or an email. Thank you.
well, thank you very much for your work. I think that's my one comment to wrap things up.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, moving on in our agenda, item 5, consent agenda items. They may be acted upon in one motion.
So moved.
Second? Second. Any discussion?
I'd like to pull item B as in boy.
Okay.
I'd like to pull F as well.
Okay. Any other items that you'd like to have removed from the consent agenda? Okay, if not, we'll take a vote on the consent agenda minus 5B and 5F. All those in favor?
Aye.
I
Aye.
Any opposed? No, motion carried. Moving on to items removed from the consent agenda. Item 5B, consider regular village board minutes, May 3rd, 2021. Trustee Stokran.
Thank you. I think I should have caught something here that I missed when I was reading the minutes on page 3 of the minutes, and I think it's page 63 of the packet. It was my understanding that we always, when we had a monetary item, we would always put in the amount. And I made this motion and there's no amount in it. And it's significant and I think it should be included. So I'd like to move to amend the minutes to, I believe it should be the 2022-2024 Wilson Capital Streetscape Maintenance Contract. And it just says the amount. And I believe when I look back through this, there's one amount for the first 2 years and a different amount for the third year. So for Sarah, I guess I would just, if we could clear this up. So besides adding Wilson and Capital Streetscape Maintenance, I want to add that I believe that it's for 2022 and 2023, it's $23,845.35 annually. And then the price increases for 2024, 3%. My math is then $24,560.71. I don't know if Leanne is on, if that seems accurate to her. I believe those numbers should be in there and the annual designation. And then I noticed we did the same thing for the natural turf management. There's no amount, and I believe it should be it's 44,497.50 annually. And so I would move to make those amendments.
Trustee Bachhorst, did you have a comment?
Well, can I make a comment when there's a motion on the table without a second?
Oh, then no. No, I think you can.
Well, if not, I'll second it. How about that?
Okay.
However, having said that, I'm going to vote against it unless these were actual words that were spoken during the meeting, and I'm not comfortable doing math on the fly and then inserting things. So I'd say we have two options. One would be to defer the minutes, have the correct information be reflected in the next go round, or vote it down. There might be other options, but those would be the only things that I would vote for at this point.
I think we actually didn't have a motion on the table around the minutes, so you don't have to, I was just
No,
really,
I think, didn't Kathy just,
You did.
oh, I see. Oh, yes, of course you did, yes. Okay, so is there a second to Kathy's motion? Nathan?
I just wanted to indicate that the purpose and intent of the minutes is to reflect what happened in the meeting. So if indeed we look back at the video and there's reference to those things, then of course, by all means, include them. But if there's not, the purpose of amending, you can't really amend the minutes to fix what you intended or something that didn't happen. So that's simply the point I want to make. And you would have to go back and look at the video. So I'm not quite sure if the indication is these things were said or they were indicated during the discussion or the motion and they're not reflected, or I wish they had been reflected. So let's retroactively put them in, which are two different things.
Okay. Trustee Bachhorst?
I was just gonna say if Trustee Silgerbrand wanted to withdraw her motion, and I'd withdraw my second. And then I'd move to defer them until the accurate information is reflected.
I guess I'll withdraw my motion then, but then I would make a new motion that staff be directed to always provide motions that include the amounts, including, so can we go back and?
Well, that's a policy discussion. We can't do that on the fly on a non-agenda. We're not agendized for that. We're on the minutes discussion right now. So.
Again? I'm sorry, Trustee Bachhorst?
Right, so if she's withdrawing her motion, I'll withdraw my second. Otherwise, I'm ready to vote it down.
Okay, Leanne has her hand raised.
Sure, thank you. I just wanted to point out that if the motion that was used was the suggested motion from the memo specifically refers to the amounts as outlined in the submitted proposal. So that proposal then would potentially, I defer to Attorney Baer, but that then becomes a part of the record, is the proposal that was submitted by the contractor vendor.
And that's what will be followed as well, I think is what you're saying as well.
Mm-hmm. Trustee Stokebrand?
I guess I thought that we had a policy that when we're voting on items that are monetary issues, that the motions include, it should not be an amendment. We should not expect people to go back through a packet.
Not a policy. That's the whole point.
This is transparency and accountability, and the motion should include the amounts. And how do we make that happen?
Going forward, we do it, or we make a policy, but at this moment, we can't make a policy during a non-agendized item. So, and that's not a policy. It's a preference expressed by previous board.
Well, I'm expressing my opinion as a current board member that motions for expenditures need to have an amount in them. And if we need to put that on a future agenda, then that's what we need to do. I thought it was
appropriate spot for it.
Thank you for your approval.
Trustee Stokebrand, yeah, I would appreciate it if you brought it up as under items for future consideration. At this time, we have the motion has been withdrawn to amend the minutes as discussed. So I would entertain a different motion related to this item.
I'll move to defer the minutes until the next board meeting to verify if there's a quantity. If not, we go with the original meeting minutes. I know that's a long motion, but one thing that I will say is we've spent a lot of times on minutes discussions in previous boards. And part of the problem with very detailed minutes is that there's always room for just one more thing. And I know that's slightly different than what Kathy is talking about here, but I say we defer it, move on, come back to it, vote on it. So
We need a second for this motion.
I move to defer.
Yep. Second for a move to defer.
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by trustee Baldoff. Any further discussion?
I just want to know, does staff have the direction they need?
Yes.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Oh, wait, further discussion.
Yeah, further discussion.
If anyone
Just
else, while
related
they're,
related to the motion only, please.
yes, if anyone else has items that they want to see in the next minutes, that between now and the next board meeting would be a great time to get those in there.
All right. Clerk Brookman, would you mind calling the roll, please?
Sure. So this is to defer the minutes. Trustee Backhorst,
Yes.
trustee Ursink,
Yes.
trustee Baldoff,
Yes.
trustee Stokebrand,
Aye.
trustee Arndorfer,
Aye.
trustee Warren,
Aye.
president McKay.
Yes,
Motion passes 7-0.
thank you. Moving on to 5F, consider 2021 to 2022 committee appointments. Trustee Ursink.
Sure. I just wanted to give you the board a quick update that last week trustee Backhorst and myself, along with Sarah, reviewed the applications, and you know, it's just incredible that we have such a great group of people willing to serve and serve our community. So really appreciate that, but we could always use more. So I just put it out there that, you know, we should be reaching out to people in our community to let them know that these boards and these committees and commissions could really use more talented people and more you know, just more people that want to serve the community. So and I'm not sure that everybody knows enough about these boards and commissions. So, you know, I put it on everybody here to reach out to people that you may know that would be a good fit, because we can always improve the way we do things here in the village. So it was great to get we had a ton of great applicants, but you know, we had a lot of applicants that would check off about 7 different boxes of things that they'd be interested in. So, you know, maybe we couldn't fit them in their first couple picks, but we found somewhere, you know, in the mix that their interest lies. So I'd say let's keep pushing internally. Let's try to get more people active in our community and engaged. And but so far we have some really great talent, really great applicants to these boards, and look forward to seeing everybody serving.
Great.
That's all I got.
Trustee Backhorst, did you have
Thank
your?
you. Thank you, Arthur. We do have a great committee. And I agree with what he said. So just to give everyone as the chair a little background, we spent an hour, we kept it to that, reviewing, we had all reviewed the applications in advance of this, just kind of setting the parameters, and Sarah guided us through the whole process. And I was really surprised and really pleased to see that the majority of the names, especially the ones that we put forward, were people that I don't know, a lot of us didn't know, but you know, they had very thorough applications, or at least they'd completed them thoroughly. It was, and again, staff has done a lot of work. The chairs of the various committees and commissions and whatnot had done a lot of work on the front end. I know in the past, at least the past couple of years, it was more of the president and the JP&L chair, but we decided that we want to do this more collaboratively within our own committee structure, and you know, give everyone a chance to kind of lead and bring forward things. And I think, I don't know, Arthur, I think the process went really well, and it was, so I'm excited. I also agree that, and maybe this is an item for future consideration too, but going forward, there are ways to improve the process. And this is my last year on the board. So I imagine that, you know, next year when the committee appointments come up, perhaps you guys will improve upon what we improved upon this time. But that we could have a standing item perhaps in the village manager's memo, or even on the webpage, prominently noted, of connecting, because it's not just imperative to have these applications for our May meeting when we make the decisions on the vacancies and, you know, the turnover and resignations, et cetera, but just ongoing to have a good pool and for us to be constantly reviewing them. And everyone on this board has access to the applications. They're all in the Dropbox. So feel free and please do go in there, because we are working on a reserve bench as well, in case people do move, quit, you know, have different life circumstances during their term. And I know in the past we've kept some of those spots open, but I don't see why we would have to do that. But that's a different policy decision. So,
You know, and honestly, with the applications we had, we just filled all the positions we needed. I don't think a lot of the folks that were really left out, we had to utilize all the applications that we had. One thing that really stuck out to me was how a lot of new people to Shorewood applied, you know, so a lot of people with 4 months in Shorewood, 5 months in Shorewood, a year in Shorewood. So a lot of engaged folks moving to the community. And then also a lot of folks that have been here for 17 years, 15 years that want to give back to the community. So that's incredible. But, you know, it'd be nice to be able to have, you know, 10, 20 extra applications that we have to put on the side. And I'll echo what Trustee Bachor said. You know, with all the different things I do in Shorewood, I tend to know a lot of people, and I wasn't familiar with a lot of the folks that were applying to these boards. So we really had to go off of their applications and a lot of their answers. So, you know, I just say, let's keep the process going. Let's keep on trying to improve the process with the application, with communication, and really let's try to tap into all the great resources we have here in Shorewood.
Trustee Stokbrand.
And I just learned today in our EDI training, I believe, Arthur, correct me if I'm wrong, but for the first time in the committee process, perhaps we use some questioning about to people, what is your experience? Have you had any experience or background in EDI or things like that, to help find a way to increase equity, diversity, and inclusion in our village?
Yeah, I forget the actual question, but it is a question geared towards what's your experience, or, you know, with EDI, and you know, we got a lot of thoughtful answers. So, and maybe we can improve on that as well. I think there's a lot of room to improve on the whole process, to be honest with you. You know, and I think if this is the way we want to do things in the future with the collaborative process with JP&L, it'd be something that I'd love to take some time and try to work through on how we can make this process even you know, more robust than it is now. But yeah, that I don't know the exact language. Maybe Sarah or Rebecca knows off the top of their head, but that language does exist in our applications now.
I do appreciate the committee responding and stepping up to this cycle of business that we're on, so that the committee so there's no disruption in the committees doing their work into, you know, June and into the summer. So I really do appreciate that. So I did say that if you could, you know, come up with a process to meet this deadline and serve this need for cycle of business, it'd be appreciated. And then you can improve on things, you know, you can agenda it in committee for further discussion. And I would also say that anybody who was not able to be appointed this time, please encourage them to attend the meetings of the boards and commissions that they're interested in, because other than, you know, official action or Robert's rules, you know, people that attend the meetings, their input is very valuable. Trustee Bachhorst, final comment?
Just because we're going to be asked to vote on the candidates tonight, I would like to add a few more items regarding how the selection process went, and just maybe this will cover some of the questions that some of you have, and I'll be succinct if I can. A couple of different things. So there were certain committees, commissions like the Planning Commission and the CDA that the president has the purview of appointing, and then we confirm, I believe, at the board level. So we didn't have, you know, she's asked for our input, but we did not have any necessarily direct role or responsibility in filling those appointments. There used to be a Parks Commission, as well as pedestrian and bicycle safety. Those two have merged now into open spaces. And this is something we had discussed years and years back, not necessarily, those two committees, but kind of creating more of an open space. So that one, I believe it's 12. We had a 12 or 13. I can't remember. It's a rather large one, kind of like conservation. So, that's new. And anyone who served on either of those two, did I get the correct two, merging of the correct two committees? Who had served on either of those two would be able to get appointed, unless they have, some other reasons that they should no longer be serving. And I think we only had 4 people from those two committees that had also applied to the open spaces. And then some of the other committees and commissions, like the Board of Appeals, has kind of a more of a, it's very beneficial if you have a law background, just given that is, so that made that a lot easier to determine. And we were fortunate to have a qualified, slate of candidates. Also, there's a lot of interest in the Planning Commission. There's a lot of interest in the CDA, a lot of interest in a couple of the other committees. So we really had our work cut out for us moving forward. Anytime, especially if we do have a special meeting like we did last Monday, anyone in the public as well as any of the board members are welcome. And the board members would be more than welcome to. We invite you. We want your participation. It makes it a lot, it helps us gel, going forward, and including answering questions tonight. But I think that's about all I have. I don't know, Sarah, if you had anything else you needed to mention.
Nope, that pretty much covers it.
I would entertain a motion at this time.
I'll move to approve the nominations for the committees, commissions, and I don't have the motion.
Yeah, I can read it. I move to approve the slated 2021 appointments and reappointments as provided for Board of Appeals, Board of Review, Business Improvement District Board, Conservation Committee, Design Review Board, Elder Service Advisory Board, Library Board, Parks and Open Spaces Committee, Plan Commission, Police Commission, and Recreation Advisory Committee, submitted by the JPNL Committee and Village President.
Second.
Any more discussion?
Kathy's got her hand up.
Kathy.
So I just wondered, when we talked about public spaces, why is public art not part of the public spaces? It seems like it would be a good fit, but I would like some background.
Open spaces, I believe, right?
So
Rebecca?
I'd be happy to provide some of that. For right now, when we did the committee consolidation, we stuck with only these 2 committees and had left out there the fact that perhaps sometime in the future, we may also continue public art. They have a more narrow focus. And so we wanted to get the committee underway and see if it would pertain and lend itself to any further inclusion of other committees. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, can you take the roll, please?
Yes. Trustee Arndorfer.
Aye.
Trustee Bachhorst.
Yes.
Trustee Baldoff.
Yes.
Trustee Stokebrand.
Aye.
Trustee Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Ursink.
Yes.
President McKay.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Moving on to item 7, public hearing. We have none this evening. Item number 8, citizens to be heard. This item is for matters not on the agenda. Discussion may follow. Comment on not agenda items or discussion and action may come at future meetings. Is there anyone who would wish to be heard this evening?
No one registered ahead of time, so if there's anybody, if they could raise their virtual hand or unmute themselves and state their name and address, that would be greatly appreciated. I have nobody, so I think you can continue on.
Thank you. Moving on, item 9, new business. 9A, consider award of contract for Hubbard Park canoe and kayak launch. Who would like to present this evening?
I
Leanne.
can start with that. Thank you. Please recall that late last year, fall, the village board approved a design concept for a proposed Hubbard Park canoe and kayak launch. That design concept was the foundation of construction drawings. That project was bid a few weeks ago. Unfortunately, we only received one bid in response to that advertisement, and it was significantly over the estimate of the design engineer. Typically in situations like this, we have a couple of options. One would be to accept the bid and construct the launch with a contract with Western Contractors, Inc. As it is TID funded, there is no particular budget allocation, but it would simply, the additional overage, we'll refer to it, would be funded by the TID. The second option would be to reject the bid and either indefinitely or permanently, let's say, shelve the project. A third option would be to reject the bid and attempt to rebid the project for 2022 construction. This third option is staff's recommendation. While I understand the desire to have the launch in Hubbard Park, I do believe that the village can do better, so to speak. I think if we wait for a period of time, have some more conversations with different contractors, we rebid the project, we can get multiple bids. And I certainly think that we may be able to construct it for less than the bid that the village currently has in hand. Of course, there are no guarantees, but as I mentioned, it's staff's recommendation that you consider the third option to rebid this project at a later date.
All right, I have trustee Bachhorst, followed by trustee Ursink, followed by trustee Warren for comments.
Thank you, President McKay. Yes, all the details that were outlined in the packet, including construction costs, the lack of availability of other individuals, only one bid, the almost doubling of the initial consideration of, well, I guess maybe it's about 2/3, or I mean, a third over, but nevertheless, yeah, I would like to go with the third option. I'll let others speak, but I'm ready to move on. So maybe if we can, unless someone doesn't want to go with the third option, maybe they can speak first. But all right, so Matt, we have a closed session tonight too.
Arthur?
I was just gonna make a motion for option 3, so. You too,
Wesley?
Wes?
Yeah, I won't be offended. I won't beat the dead horse, but yes, I'm supportive of option 3.
All right, I would entertain a motion.
All right, so Tammy, would you like to make that motion since you were,
No, I don't want to be the killjoy of the canoe launch.
come on. Okay, I will make the motion to, I move that the bid submitted for Hubbard Park Canoe and Kayak Launch Project be rejected and the project be rebid at a future date to be determined.
I'll second.
Parliamentary procedure, do we have to put what that future date is, or do we have to vote again if that to TBD date?
There was, in the memo, it said 2021, which I think was a typo, and you intended it to be 2022. So I think that was what the staff recommendation was. So I think we should put 2022 in the
I agree.
motion. Friendly amendment?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Friendly amendment, Wesley? Great. All right. So if there's is there further discussion?
I just, I guess my only question is, Leanne, do you think, because of COVID and everything that's been going on this past year, do you feel like, companies may be too busy to do a project like this, or there's a lot of projects where if we move on to next year, there might be a lot more opportunities to work with companies, or, what would you say the reasoning for only getting one bid on this is?
I think it's possible that there are a couple. it's not the most accessible location for construction. And that will tend to weed out, so to speak, maybe some of the larger contractors. I think it's a relatively small project, and the return is probably not what some of the larger contractors would be very interested in. So that drops our pool some. Everyone is very busy. And to some degree, I think that's COVID related. We may see that change a bit in 2022. I did have a conversation with a contractor that I had expected to submit a bid, and they are very busy. He said they intended to submit a bid, but the project kind of got away from them. So I think if we give everybody and give things a little bit of time to settle down, I think we may see more interest in this at a later date.
Trustee Bachhorst?
I will say construction costs are through the roof this year, and lumber prices, I know this does use some, but 2.5 times what they were a year ago. And a lot of people are investing in their homes, and yeah, that small project, maybe we'll have to look at creative options, like, not, I hate to say this, but temporary naming rights or something, or, you know, a plaque, or a creative way to perhaps get more interest, to understanding that they're not gonna, that there might be some other opportunities down the road. But anyway, I'm ready to vote.
I would like, well, we have a motion. I didn't ask if there was any public comments. I saw Mike Marr joined us this evening. He's been a longtime advocate for this project. Are there any public? Oh, yes, Mike?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the board for continuing to move this project forward. It's been part of our Milwaukee River Greenway plan, and the village has been committed to the Greenway for a lot of years. So I think the action you're taking is a very prudent action to see if we can get a bit better project and a more complete project next year when the prices have gone down. So I really appreciate all the board members' support of the Greenway, and also to keep moving forward on it. And I also want to thank you for all your time you put in. It's an amazing amount of time on the village board activity. So thank you. I just wanted to let you know I do support moving it to the next year. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Well,
Good to
that
see you,
makes
Mike.
sense. Yeah, good to see you. All right. Any last comments? Okay, seeing none, I would ask you to take the roll, Sarah.
Yep. Trustee Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Arndorfer.
Aye.
Trustee Stokebrand.
Aye.
Trustee Ursink.
Aye.
Trustee Baldoff.
Aye.
Trustee Bachhorst.
Yes.
President McKay.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, thank you very much. Going on to 9B, consider police department parking lot improvements. I believe that even though Chief Nimmer is not an expert in parking lots, that he will be presenting this evening. Is that true? We do a lot of cross training here in the village.
Yes. Thank you. So in your packet, you have quite a bit of information on the history of the parking lot. I believe you've been updated on, we had a sinkhole develop after the February board meeting, which ultimately was repaired. You'll see in your packet, DPW took out a large section of the parking lot, and due to the time of year, and again, not an asphalt expert, but put a cold patch in there to temporarily make that area safe and not to further get any sinkholes. From what I've been told, that while the cold patch was the only option at that time of year, as you'll notice also from the pictures, it's not holding up very well. And there's being some consideration to possibly remove that and asphalt that to get us through until next year. I think the cold patch will be a difficult thing to keep intact throughout the next 9 months till the parking lot is replaced. So that's a little bit of a back history. Some of the other things in your packet are considerations for engineering and also considerations for the company to remove the tank. So if I may, I'm going to start with the tank removal, and then I'll talk about I'll actually probably turn over the engineering part to Leanne. But from the tank perspective, whoever does the parking lot is not going to do the tank removal because of the expertise involved in removing that possible contaminated soil around the tank. And for those that are new to the board, there's a fuel tank. I believe it is 2,000 gallon tank that sits right in front of the 2 garage doors. And that was there since probably the 1950s. And that tank remained. There was another tank on the north side of the building, and that tank has been removed and remediated. However, the 2,000 gallon tank remains. And so as a part of when we took ownership of the building, the idea was whenever we replaced the parking lot, we would remove the tank. And so now that we're at the time of talking about replacing the parking lot, it makes the only sense to take out the tank as well. In your packet, you have 2 links to the environmental studies that were done by a local company, and that was done by, I believe the name is Freeze. And along with that, in the phase 2 report, he also provided a cost breakdown for what it would cost to remove the tank, remove the soil, and take that soil to an area where it can be disposed of properly, and then refill that area, and then do all of the documentation that's needed to close the site with the DNR. In addition to that, Freeze Environmental currently does all of the reporting on that tank on a yearly basis. Since they've done the environmental study, they do the reporting to the DNR on the yearly basis. While I think there's other companies that could possibly do that, his costs have remained the same since 2016, and he's still willing to do the project. Leanne may be able to answer if there are a lot of companies that do this. I'm sure there are other environmental companies, but they've been with us since 2016 on this project. So we have to discuss, the removal, and then the other one is the parking lot, and that there are 2 items in your packet regarding engineer services, because if you recall at the February meeting, there was discussion on green infrastructure and those types of things. And the 2 engineers are, I believe we have our village engineer, so to speak, that is Strand, and they provided a amount to do the design for the parking lot, which came in under $10,000. And then another company who is doing the design for the Hubbard Park lot also provided a quote, and that was roughly, I think, $20,000. In your packet, we've listed some advantages and disadvantages of that. And if there's specific questions on, what staff thinks, I will let Leanne answer those because she's better suited for that. And then certainly the third option is to go out to RFP on the design for the parking lot and then bring that back to you. So that kind of sums up the memo. I'll turn it back over to President McCaig for questions or comment.
Thank you. Trustees, what kinds of questions do you have? Would you like to hear from Leanne in terms of pros and cons? Trustee Ursink, Arthur?
Yeah, no, obviously I want to dig a little bit into the, Green Solutions grant and how we can apply some of that money to any of the green infrastructure here in the parking lot. And, what are the disadvantages of green infrastructure here? is it worthwhile? Obviously, I think everything we can do green GI wise is a good option. I know it's probably going to come at a little bit more of a cost. I'm hoping some of that Green Solutions funding can offset that cost a little bit, but I want to know kind of what you guys are thinking as far as GI projects or GI for this potential lot. I do, you know, from being at the police station, this lot just needs to be done as soon as possible. It is just, you know, we've got this brand new, beautiful facility. We've got all of these cars, you know, and police vehicles that are constantly going over these potholes. It's just, it's a nightmare, you know? So this needs to be done sooner than later, in my opinion. I think we've pushed this down the road too far. You know, so that's my personal opinion, but I just want to dig a little bit more into the green infrastructure and what that means for this particular site.
I can answer that conceptually. As with any other project, it's really difficult to comment on green infrastructure before we've started engineering. But in conceptual conversations with both engineering firms, their initial reaction after viewing the site was to install a permeable paver strip very similar to the manner in which we construct green alleys. All of the drainage from the lot drains to the east and down the slope in front of the garage doors. So it would be a relatively simple installation. I would suspect a relatively inexpensive. We would be able to drain the entire upper lot in just a small portion of the lower lot in front of the overhead doors. So as GI goes, that's pretty straightforward and fairly economical. So I would suspect that this should be a relatively easy solution. At this point, I do not have any cost estimates or anything beyond just that conceptual statement. Certainly the available GI or Green Solutions funding that we have carried over from previous project years, I'm confident that there would be sufficient funding there to cover these GI costs with this lot.
And both companies can do this, both Strand and.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
So we're being asked to take two actions this evening, and one is to approve staff to enter into a contract with Freeze Environmental Consulting for the tank removal. And then the other is to choose an engineering option, of which there are kind of three that were presented. So I just wanted to remind everybody that that's kind of where we're trying to get to. The tank, since there is not a decision either or with the tank removal, if there's somebody who is ready to make a motion on that item or has specific questions around that, maybe we could take that first. Trustee Shopian?
So on these, can we do a not to exceed or something on these motions? There's no number in the motions. I believe we were told that it would not exceed 27,250.
Right.
And so we're looking at 2022, is that correct? Or with the tank removal, this is all going to happen in 2022, is that correct?
So
are you ready for a motion, Chairman?
Yes.
I move to approve staff to enter into a contract with Freeze Environmental Consulting, Inc. for the removal, remediation, and closure of the Police Department South parking lot, the removal of the tank located at the Shorewood Police Department in 2022, not to exceed $27,250.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Or let's do a roll call, please.
Sure. Trustee Stokebrand.
Aye.
Trustee Ursink.
Aye.
Trustee Backhorst.
Yes.
Trustee Baldoff.
Aye.
Trustee Arndorfer.
Aye.
Trustee Warren.
Aye.
President McKay.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. All right, so for the engineering options, we have a lower and a higher bid, although the higher bid would allow us to engineer for both lots, and possibly there would be savings and economies of scale with that one. Is there any discussion on those and further questions, or is there anyone who's ready to make a motion? Trustee Strokevan.
I just wanted to be clear. So there's a possibility of economies of scale in choice 1 and choice 2. But for some reason, I'm trying to understand, I'm missing something intrinsic here, I think. If we go with SEH, it'll cost $10,000 more for them to design. If we add to their current contract for Hubbard Park Engineering, it's going to cost $10,000 more to add it, which is basically what it's costing Strand.
It's really not a function of adding. We asked them to provide a cost proposal to do the work, and the 19,000 number was their cost proposal.
So Strand said, or I'm sorry, SEH says for us to engineer the new south lot at the police station will cost $20,000, whereas Strand is willing to do it for 10.
Correct.
And the economies of scale between choice 1 and 2, do we have any idea? So are these, they're both design economies of scale, correct?
No, they would be construction economies of scale. SCH is currently the design engineer for the Hubbard Park parking lot. If they design both parking lots, those would be let as one project, one construction project. So they'd be construction economies of scale, not design economies of scale.
And the economies of scale with Strand is?
There are none.
Oh, I'm sorry, missing. Important word in the sentence, missing. Thank you.
Is there any indication whether the economies of scale would exceed $10,000, which is the difference in the bid?
That's difficult to know at this point. I really can't put a number on it. An intangible benefits, I think intangible to the board, maybe less so to our department, is that you know, it would be a cost savings or time savings for staff, as we would only have to administer one project rather than two. Can I tell you with certainty that combination of, you know, a couple dozen hours savings plus economies of construction scale would cancel out that additional 10,000? I can't say that with any certainty.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a recommendation? Well, it sounds like you did just make a recommendation. You have a preference.
I don't. You know, Strand does excellent design work. Their designs are always really tight. There are no errors. We know exactly what we're going to get, and we save money and time in that sense. You know, I think everybody was really impressed with SCH's proposal for Hubbard parking lot. They were very creative. They put together a really great team. This is my first design engineering project with SCH, so I'm really hopeful that we're going to get a great product, and I'm sure that we will. But I don't have a past experience to tell you about.
Leanne, I didn't ask you this before, but is there, has Strand worked with like an environmental company in the past to collaborate on that removal of the tank? Because that's going to take some collaboration between whoever's going to do the parking lot and the environmental, or is the other company SEH?
Yeah, it will take construction collaboration. I really don't anticipate a significant amount of engineering collaboration. They each kind of do their thing, and the real collaboration is going to come when we have to get the contractors to coordinate, because there will be a contractor Freeze will use a contractor. They'll do their work, they'll clear out, and then we'll bring the paving contractor in. So that's where the coordination collaboration would have to take place.
Trustee Warren?
Well, first, thank you for the commentary, Leanne. It's much appreciated. And I do appreciate that it would be probably a little easier to administer one project as opposed to two. That said, $10,000 in light of, budgetary challenges, I feel like I have one thing that I'm talking about a lot tonight, is a lot of money, and kind of this nebulous return that we would get for economies of scale, which does exist, but we can't quantify as well as we would like. I think it means that my preference would be, it's a little bit too nebulous for me. I think my preference would be to go with Strand, given that we know it would save $10,000. We know they've done excellent work in the past. It seems to me like that would be the choice, and that would be the one that I would support when we do have a motion here.
Would you like to make a motion?
Sure. We'll see. I will move to approve staff to enter into a contract with Strand for engineering services for the police department parking lot replacement in an amount not to exceed $9,980.
Second.
I think you're on mute, Anne.
I think you're on mute.
I am totally on mute. Why don't you call the roll just for consistency? Thank you.
All right. This would be to enter into with Strand. Trustee Ursink.
Aye.
Trustee Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Bachhorst.
Yes.
Trustee Stokebrand.
Aye.
Trustee Arndorfer.
Aye.
Trustee Baldoff.
Aye.
President McKeag.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Wonderful. Okay, we have two items coming up. It's a change in ordinance. They're housekeeping changes for ordinance. So what I would propose is that we take both of those, and then I would propose a short break before the next two. So we can hang in there. Okay. So item 9C, consider ordinance 3024, an ordinance repealing and replacing chapter 250 of the Shorewood Village Code, construction site erosion control and stormwater management. So Leanne, is this you?
Yep, sure. It is me, and you are correct. This is essentially a housekeeping item as part of the village's recent stormwater management plan efforts. Both our consultants and DNR reviewed our existing stormwater construction site erosion control ordinance and made some suggestions, particularly areas so that the village can remain in compliance with the governing administrative rules under the Department of Natural Resources umbrella. So the new code section in your packet for your consideration makes all of those suggested changes.
All right. Trustee Bachhorst?
I was just going to make a motion.
Excellent.
I move approval of ordinance 3024, an ordinance repealing or replacing chapter 250 of the Shorewood Village Code, construction site erosion control and stormwater management.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. This is a roll call vote or any discussion? All right, hearing none. This is a roll call vote.
Trustee Bachhorst.
Yes.
Trustee Arndorfer. Trustee Ursink.
Yes.
Trustee Baldoff.
Yes.
Trustee Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Stokebrand.
Aye.
President McKeag.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Wonderful, thank you. We have 9D, consider ordinance 3025, an ordinance amending chapter 225, building construction, and chapter 415, plumbing standards to comply with the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District's combined sewer service area downspout disconnection program. So this is another update.
Also housekeeping in the sense that this is an action to follow up on a previous village board discussion related to MMSD's Chapter 3 rule, which requires the disconnection of downspouts on residential structures in the combined sewer service area. Essentially what this does is it updates 2 areas of the village code to exactly match the conditions under which MMSD requires and provides a variance for those downspout disconnections. It's purely for clarification. It'll allow a resident to read the downspout disconnection program requirements and exactly match them against code language.
Mhm. That seems like a positive change. Trustee Bachhorst,
I was gonna make a motion.
I would entertain that motion.
I recommend approval of ordinance 3025 and ordinance amending chapter 225, building construction, and chapter 415, plumbing standards to comply with the MMSD's chapter 3 rule, combined sewer service area downspout disconnection.
Second.
There's a first and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, this will be a roll call vote.
Trustee Baldoff,
Yes.
trustee Arndorfer,
Aye.
trustee Warren,
Aye.
trustee Ursink,
Aye.
trustee Bachhorst,
Yes.
trustee Stokebrand,
Aye.
President McKay.
Aye,
Motion passes 7-0.
thank you. All right, I would like to propose that we take a, how many minutes do you guys need for a bio break?
5.
5, excellent. 5 minutes, see you back here, 9:04. Thank you. And mute your cameras and actually mute All right, it is 9:04. I'm going to assume that we have everybody back and accounted for. I guess I'm not going to, okay, well, here we've got 4.
Pretty good to start.
Okay, great. All right, the next item on our agenda is item 9E, discuss budget outlook and revenue diversification options. I appreciate Mark Manison for bringing this forward this evening as this is a very proactive look at the budget for 2022. It is a high-level overview of some of the challenges that we are going to be, we're pretty certain we're going to be facing. And there are some budgeting strategies that we can consider. No action is needed tonight. Guidance is welcome, but not required. So I know it's a lot of technical, it's a lot of information to take in. And Mark does a great job of outlining, as always, kind of what all the options are for diversification or addressing budget challenges. However, there is one option that is strong. And so, this is a general overview, and it's just to say that we don't have to get like deep into the weeds because we have some time to make a decision on this, but if there is guidance, I'm sure he would appreciate that. So with this, Trustee Stokebrand and I and myself met with Mark and Rebecca to do a high-level overview of this item, and I really appreciated that. And with that, I will hand it over to Mark, correct? Is that what I'm looking?
Correct.
Okay, great.
Well, thank you. I try to be thorough. We've got 5-6 pages in this section of the packet. I don't want to read through them all, but I also don't want to just gloss over it because it does present some significant issues, items to review, and we'll provide some context looking forward as we will, before you know it, start really in earnest approaching the 2022 budget discussions. So the first page really highlights the 3 critical issues that Shorewood faces when talking about increasing costs over time. The first challenge is that we're a fully built out community. So any increase in cost is pretty much spread out amongst the people who are already here. We're not building new subdivisions to broaden the tax base. We've had some, pretty good success on some redevelopment areas over the years. Most of those were TID related projects. Some others occur, but in the scope of a $1.5 billion community, we're fully built out. The second challenge is that, our community relies, and many Wisconsin communities, if not all of them, rely substantially on property taxes to pay for services of their government. And Shorewood is not any exception. It's about 75% of all of the village's revenue streams to provide services comes from property taxes. The remaining revenue streams are flat. So any increases have to be filled by and large through property taxes or other new fees. So that's a real challenge. That presents some tough discussions when looking at services and the impact that has on property taxes. And then the third challenge, again, not really unique to Shorewood as a municipality, but so many of the village's costs are locked up per se, and staff costs, benefit costs, other governmental costs for fire protection, communications, health departments, contractual payments for legal, assessors, health insurance, and then even in the supplies line item. I mean, big components of that are for salt, for the roadways, for parts for repairing vehicles, for really core operational items. So it really presents a challenge when you have increasing cost pressures to find a way to address that through, let's just say, on the edge financial cuts, $1,000 here, $2,000 there, because there's just not an overabundance of items that you can do that with. So that lends us down the discussion path of significant service level changes to impact the budget is when it comes to costs. Again, a very, very difficult discussion to have. Most gets into some of what we see as the structural issues that face our particular organization. Summarized in 6 line items in the table. Large segments of our budget, which are going to increase. They're going to show what those increase amounts are, 2021 to 2022. The difference comes up with a total. Now, the one item that is not etched in stone per se is a capital funding stream. That becomes more of a sustainability issue. Reductions of certain fundings for capital items like fleet maintenance, fleet replacement, to some degree facilities maintenance and other projects has dwindled recently, but those are unsustainable levels. So staff has always tried to communicate that sustainable levels for annual capital funding are about $750,000. Now, there's a separate memo to follow this. It talks just about capital baseline and sustainable funding. But taking that at the values that are in the table, we start out the year having done nothing, looking at a $700,000 increase in costs. Now, there are ways to mitigate some of that. We will process through that in the budget cycle. But the biggest challenge with that is, first of all, that's implying as what I've previously said, that the largest portion of that's going to fall on tax levy. The second portion of the challenge is that the village is eligible for about $260,000 of state aids for a program called expenditure restraint. And we get that money as long as we manage our expenditures in a manner consistent with the program. However, our current projections estimate that to be compliant with that, we'll only have about $300,000 of available increases to maintain compliance. So again, at the surface level, the structural level, tables indicate about $700,000 of cost increase for long-term sustainable budgeting, but only $300,000 of that is allowable to maintain our compliance with the expenditure restraint program. So that gives us about a $400,000 gap between those two objectives. Now, we'll continue to go through all of those items as part of our budgetary process, but just from the onset, the board does have the ability to provide advanced guidance to help prepare the budget that may address some expenditure related items, outright expenditure cuts. And that's listed on the bottom third of the page there with the table with all the numbers on it. So staff has identified the top 9 list of things that could be done. We're not recommending any of those necessarily. Some of those are pretty low impact items from a $12 million budget perspective and have high disruption factor either inside the organization or in the community. So, but they're clearly identifying items to be considered in advance. So you read through those at your convenience. The one thing I will mention is that item number 4, when it comes to the lifeguards at Atwater Beach, We do not expect to be able to renew our Atwater Beach lifeguard contract next year with our existing vendor. And we're not sure we can resolve that situation through Milwaukee County or other avenues. So that item will be coming to you for additional discussion and input outside of the budget process. That's driven by staff due to a contractual concern for even being able to obtain those services in 2022. The following page then talks about revenues. The other way to avoid raising taxes to maintain services or sustainable budgetary practices are to find ways to diversify the village's reliance on property taxes. And that can be either through diversification of the revenue stream by bringing in new revenues, or by shifting revenues from the property tax to other sources so that do not count against the village's limits for, in particular, for qualifying for the expenditure restraint program. We've outlined the 4 significant possibilities there, from the water utility public protection fee, creating a refuse collections utility. Both of those options create a transfer of current services to alternative billing structures, taking them off the tax roll. They do not by themselves reduce costs at all. It's just a mechanism for funding them in alternate ways. Item 3 and item number 4 are new revenue streams to, again, diversify our revenues. I'm sure there's a lot of other potential options. Staff likes to focus in on items with a bunch of zeros after them to make significant impacts. But we can certainly we'll look at our fee schedules. We'll look at any number of things in the budgetary process. But when it comes to preparing the budget and some structural changes and policy changes, staff would appreciate guidance from the board before we prepare the budget, so we can come to the board with a budget that can closely meet the board's expectations as possible. These are extremely difficult discussions to have during the budget cycle, as well as many of them may require some lead time to implement to make them effective for the 2022 budget. So we've built into our process that these items will be included for consideration when we talk about the fee schedule or any staffing changes. I believe that is in, that's in July. They may come back to the finance committee for the finance committee to weigh in on. And I do have some supplemental materials prepared for each one of those revenue and tax levy diversification options for you to review. I'm not going to go over them now. I'm happy to take questions during the week offline. But I would like to just take a couple more moments to touch on the capital budgeting baselines memo, which follows the original budget challenges preview. And again, from a capital sustainability perspective, we've got 2 types of projects and needs. One is the long range plan infrastructure projects, largely bond qualified. They do not draw upon annual resources except to the extent that they may impact future debt service. The other is our other capital projects and one-time projects. Those are typically funded by annual revenue streams, most notably property taxes and state aids. We'll use some state aids to fund the purchase of some DPW heavy equipment from time to time. Other items that we tend to correlate with maintenance of the roadway system, although we're not required to draw that correlation. It's been past practice. I think it's a reasonable practice, so I will entertain continuing that. But the village does have over $7 million in vehicles that need to be replaced on a recurring basis in order to prevent the whole fleet from continuing to age. You know, the real challenge is if you pare down in 1 or 2 budget cycles on your replacement schedules, the entire fleet gets another year older before it can be replaced, because you can't just, I mean, staff can't just come to the board saying, okay, well, we've been pretty conservative the last 3-4 years. We'd like to replace $370,000 dump trucks next year. That's not practical, and staff understands that. And so that's where, when we talk about sustainable, we talk about what it takes on an ongoing basis to cover a routine replacement of our vehicles as they start aging out and deteriorating in condition, reduced reliability, increased maintenance costs, and the like. We also have another $1 million in refuse collection trucks, 600,000 in police vehicles, $2 million in general DPW vehicles. So it's a lot of things you have to cycle through in a 10 to 15 year period to maintain the quality of the equipment we use. The following page lists some line item numbers, 120, what staff recommends as being a target value for some of these items on replacements. 125,000 for police vehicles, which is basically two vehicles a year out of, I believe, 11. Again, that's an average. DPW vehicles and other heavy equipment, about 300,000 a year to sustain the replacement schedule for that equipment. Three items for 25,000 a year currently in the capital budget. They're recurring expenses. They need to be funded. And then another $250,000 for the list of the 5 other items that are funded annually. You know, IT network system maintenance and replacement, software and technology purchases and upgrades, major facility maintenance and improvements, parks improvements, major maintenance in the parks, and other village capital costs are one-time initiatives. And there's studies, there's plans, there's other things that come up from time to time that are a little more unique in their nature, but we're pretty sure that they're going to come up in one fashion or another based on our history. And we have about $250,000 we believe that's going to average out to in the long term. So with that said, I did do a little fiscal note analysis to share with the board. You know, the 5-year trend that we've seen and the commitment to annual funding in the capital projects, general capital projects fund, particularly some detail at the bottom of that table on how much has been applied towards vehicles and equipment. Again, staff is always going to recommend to fund to a sustainable level. And then, you know, we get into the budget process and we do what we need to do to get through that process and reach an outcome that is acceptable to the board. I will make a mention that it will be staff's recommendation at this point in time, for reasons that are identified in the memo, that we move ahead with the revenue diversification option number 1, and that's the transfer of the public fire protection fees to the water utility. Again, that's consistent with all of our other peer groups. So we will discuss that item in more detail moving forward, but really just want to set the outline for, you know, the issues that staff faces in preparing the budget and some of the challenges that the board faces in making the decisions that also impact the budget. And we're hopeful that we do have an opportunity to get feedback before we have to bring a proposed budget to the board that may or may not include any of these options as the board's desire. And then we'll come back with a budget that reflects that. So any questions at that point? That's really just my rapid fire summary at 9:24 p.m.
Well, now I'm wide awake. I was I feel just refreshed. No, thank you very much for that. Just procedurally, since we are not required to take any action this evening, when would something, I can see in your note that you, if the board would like staff to move ahead with any of these options, that we should place it on an item for future consideration. If that doesn't happen this evening, when would this come back for us?
I will actually apologize for that. That is a note from last year's memo that I did not update.
Okay.
Because we've added the consideration of these items as part of our budget process. So that will definitely be coming back to the board. Obviously, if somebody wants to accelerate that, they're certainly able to do so. But we will be bringing all these most likely through committee and then back to the board when we start talking as well about potential staffing level changes and potential fee updates. So the board will definitely have an opportunity to consider these items.
Okay, so I see some hands. I'd like to hear what the board is thinking. And since we don't have to take action tonight, let's just try to keep it general and so that, because we do have other items to take care of this evening. Let's see, I saw Trustee Erzing first, and then Trustee Stokebrand, Trustee Baldoff, and Trustee Arndorfer.
Thank you, President McCullough. I think just reviewing this, these are all, tough pills to swallow. Looking at the recommendations, we are going to need to do something. In my perspective, there's probably one of these tough decisions that outside of the number one out of the list of four here, I do believe that in the installation of parking meters on Oakland is probably, as hard as it is for me to say that, because I love our business district the way it is, I feel like that's one of the more realistic ones. And if you look at a financial impact of $200,000 plus per year, I think that, for me, I would be, I'd be in favor of trying to move that one along sooner rather than later. So that's just my opinion. I'd be in favor of number 4.
Trustee Stokebrand?
Thank you. On the parking meters, I saw was the fee, the revenues, is that a gross or a net? I mean, obviously there's only a one-time installation charge, maybe a little bit of maintenance. And with this then, so there'd be the install plus the cost for the, would we have to add police staff then to be a parking checker, or would you outsource that to a private company?
Well, I ran some back of the envelope calculations about 3 years ago, counted our parking spaces, assuming we're going to wrap the corners right off the commercial district, and applied metrics to it. So it's a general estimate of what I think the long-term net will be. Now that depends on how many meters are installed, what the fees are that the board is willing to adopt for that. I can tell you that it will not require any additional enforcement. In some respects, it may expedite enforcement, although enforcement is the back end of the process. The front end of the process for the parking meters is to keep turnover going on our commercial districts, giving everybody access to the limited parking closest to the commercial districts. And again, looking at our comparable communities, many other communities have these types of revenue options, and the village does not currently. So when we talk about comparing at a staff level, I hear about comparing tax rates between communities. And I always start out with, well, this is apples and oranges, right? We're doing different service levels, different revenues, different revenue recovery models. But that's a little inside baseball. At the end of the day, people want to look at the tax bill and say, well, my house here in Shorewood cost me this much in taxes. If I lived somewhere else, it cost me this much. And that's about as far as that discussion tends to go with any kind of legs. So, again, it's not an outlier proposal. It's definitely a policy shift in the community. But the board has asked staff to provide viable options for them to consider, and this is one of the things that remains on the list.
And then I just had two things I wanted to ask about the public fire protection fees. That would be a little time sensitive besides the budget process. If we wanted to have, you had to get that to the Public Service Commission for approval to place that on a November bill, right? Their quarterly bill. So that would be, you would need approval by July. Is that correct?
On that item, staff would need approval before the budget to make it applicable to the 2022 budget. So that is correct. Now, parking meters is a multi-year impact. This is not going to happen spontaneously. If the board felt strongly that they wanted to move ahead with that, it'll probably be a 2023 budget item. Given what our discussions were on Oakland Avenue reconstruction, I'm not sure what the best timing for that would be, but again, given guidance, staff can prepare and bring back more information if it's something the board is likely to support. Obviously, staff doesn't want to spend its limited resources preparing all sorts of information and documentation on it's not going to support. So that's kind of the process here.
And then I just had one more question. I believe I think we have 3,000 residential users that get water utility bills, and with the standard size for us, let's say the average house size is assessed at $320,000. What did your estimate on the monthly increase on that homeowner for their water bill would be if we added the fire protection?
It'd be between $80 and $90. So the taxes would go down by $80 or $90 for that homeowner, but the fee that the PSC derives would go up by 80 or 90. The challenge with stopping the conversation there is that this is all done within the context that we're going to backfill that cost, right? So again, this is a method of trying to maintain compliance with expenditure restraint. Certainly the board does not have to restore the capital funding to its full level of sustainability, or the board may challenge staff's assertions of what is a sustainable budget practice, for those capital items. But again, just from its 100 level view, 1,000 level view, this is the structural challenges that we're looking to be a little more proactive on, to give staff an opportunity to bring forth a budget that more closely resembles the board's direction.
And when you said backfill that cost, what did you mean by that?
Well, we've identified $700,000 of a cost increase, right? Prospectively. So if we remove $420,000 of costs from the public fire protection fees, that takes the 700,000 number and moves it to 280,000. So that by itself would allow us to be compliant with our expenditure restraint. But it's not to imply that taxes are going to go down through this maneuver directly, because you're still looking at a 280,000 cost increase in this structural concept, sort of a review of the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, you said that the trustee Stokebrand asked what the monthly increase would be, and you said $80 to $90. Did you mean annually?
I did mean annual.
Okay.
I did mean annual. So it's, well, yeah, less than $10 a month, less than $8 a month, most likely.
On the water bill.
On the water bill.
Of an average home.
Yeah.
Right. Trustee Baldoff and Jim.
I just wanted to say, thanks for Mark and staff for giving us a lot of options to be considering. I think that some of these are going to require some significant conversation with the community before we'd be ready to move forward on some of these ideas. And especially I think when it comes to things like installing parking meters or a wheel tax, I think that's going to require a lot of conversation with the community. and consideration of, you know, who is going to be impacted most by those kinds of changes, and are we, you know, meeting our goals to be, you know, inclusive and have equity in the decisions we're making. But it does sound to me, however, that the two other, you know, levy diversification options, number 1 and 2, as they relate to transitioning some costs to user fees, seem, you know, like a pretty straightforward idea. And I mean, I would be ready to make a motion on those if anybody else is. It seems like those are the recommendations of staff and something that would be a decision that we could move forward on sooner rather than later, to make sure that the rest of our conversation down the road around the budget is centered around some of these ideas where we're going to have a lot more community input and conversation.
Thank you. Jim?
Thank you. I guess my first question with regard to the public fire protection charge / fees. Yeah, the 2017 tax reform did limit the deductibility. I mean, it didn't totally do away with it though. So do we have any estimate as to what that benefit is for Shorewood taxpayers? Ballpark, is that a number we could get at?
Well, my understanding is that pretty much every tax bill in the city is going to exceed the max.
Okay, all right.
So
okay,
I don't think we're impeding the deductibility on that, except maybe a few very rare situations for.
Okay, so it's not a factor then. Okay, thank you. Yeah, with regard to the meters, I think Trustee Stokerbrand got it. My question I had, just in terms of, you know, what are the administrative costs or something like that going to look like? But I mean, it sounds like the number you were talking about was net. So, I mean, an estimate, right?
Right.
Okay. And then finally, with regard to garbage, you know, refuse collection, if we went to something like that, I mean, who would be the, you know, how would that shake out in terms of winners and losers, if you will? I mean, would some people see an adverse impact if we went to that model?
Well, there's always some people who have I mean, right, because if you're dealing on averages, there's some people above and some people below the average. So we did a fair amount of analysis on this topic in conjunction with the Conservation Committee. And there's opportunities in that model for people to help control their costs in the long term. But staff has not advanced this particular proposal far enough that I have done the analytics on you know, who would be a winner or a loser. I mean, generally speaking, again, a shift from an average to a utility bill, which is based on an average. We're heavily residential, single family, a lot of duplexes. That I would have to do a further analysis down the road if the board was interested in moving in that direction.
Okay, thank you.
Wesley, did you have something?
I did. You know, this is part and parcel of going late in the order. Like, Trustee Arndorfer and Trustee Baldock took a lot of my points and probably said them much more eloquently than I would. But just kind of thinking through, and I can kind of go down the line. I'll try to be quick because we're already sitting at 9:40 and we still got a lot of stuff to go through. But you know, the 9. Thank you so much for putting this together. First of all, really appreciate it. It lays out our options concisely, and it's trying to get ahead of an issue that we're inevitably going to face. That said, you know, 1 through 9 for me, they strike me as every penny does count when you're talking about budgeting. Every single one, but kind of nevertheless with these kind of, it looks like they're going to be kind of, in light of the gap we're facing, rather minimal input, rather minimal impact on that gap and really, really high pain points on a lot of these. Just kind of looking through whether it's Shorewood's ability to retain staff, which is incredibly important, or just kind of safety measures like staffing of lifeguards at Atwater Beach, which I think is totally necessary, or fair pavement practices. So I think we really need to think about those. As for the creation of the utilities, I think it's a good point that Jim made, in terms of where's the impact there. I think we just need to look at that further. But Mark, as you said, we can slide things around there and figure out different ways to design kind of our utilities, which might mitigate some of the equity impacts that it could have. Both of the utilities, I think those provide us a little more flexibility to design and customize. Where I really struggle are the wheel tax and the parking meters. I see those as very regressive taxes, and I do think that they kind of reflect kind of on some of our, I understand that there's a gap to be made up, and I understand it's a conversation we need to have, but I think part of that conversation needs to be, is this sort of regressive tax something that we want to implement? Even though I do understand, you go to Bay, they have meters in their business district. I understand that it's pretty commonplace, but it's also something that we've resisted, and I think we really want to think through kind of what our values are as a community before we have these kind of regressive, kind of flat taxes that charge everyone the same, in terms of kind of generating revenue. So I struggle with those two as well. But again, thank you for putting this together. Really appreciate trying to get out ahead of this. We're going to have to make some tough decisions, and we might have to make some uncomfortable decisions, but I do like the fact that we're having this conversation early so we can figure out what the impacts are and whether we're in fact comfortable with those impacts as we try to close some of the gap that we're facing.
If I could just follow up real briefly on that. I don't know if you read the memo that circulated with the village manager's update in its entirety, but that is one of the beneficial impacts of the public fire protection fee is it's based on meter size. So the bigger properties pay more. It's not just one size fits all. So that helps to a degree mitigate some of those types of flat one fee fits all concepts. So thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Tammy?
Thank you. I won't reiterate all the comments, but I will agree with Wes here. Regressive flat taxes do kind of go against a lot of what we have been talking about in Shorewood for being an open, welcoming community. I would be more inclined to look at some of the more creative solutions that again do not fall in that category of the flat tax. So a wheel tax, we already have a wheel tax from the county. I know Milwaukee has one too. I disagree with that. I think that you most adversely impact those that can least afford it. I'd be more inclined to do a driveway tax, as a matter of fact, or something along those lines, because again, we have a fair number of students, older individuals, etc. And even though $20, one might say, isn't that much for people in their lower income bracket, it definitely is. Also, I know the Conservation Committee has supported, and it's in the memo here as well, the refuse, shifting that and creating a utility. I think that I'm not sure if this would allow us then to also do like we did back in Seattle and a lot of pretty progressive places do, which is per use or waste, you pay for how much you dispose of versus everyone gets a giant bin. And that would also, of course, decrease the amount that goes into landfills, and we'd be better stewards overall. And perhaps some people would make better decisions. But again, I don't know all the data on that regarding equity and everything else. So I would like to encourage all of you to, and I know I've sent messages to the board members regarding the League of Wisconsin Municipalities Legislative Lobbying League. It's time for all of us to really step up our game and make sure that the state laws change so that we don't have this unnecessary heavy burden on property taxes And Wisconsin, I think, is what, first or second in the nation as far as our reliance for municipal services are funded in this regard. So I'm not saying we have to throw it all at the state, but without a change in the state law, we're doing this every year. And costs are going to continue to rise, right? And the state aid is going to continue to be flat or even lower. And we're going to have that delta that we have to make up either by cutting services, increasing property taxes, and there's only so much we can go. We want to do great things in this village, affordable housing, other things like that. We just extended, the closing of TID 1 in order to do that. And yet now we're going to potentially be nickeling and diming people in other areas. So we have, I'm sorry, I'm kind of scattered all over here, but I'm so happy, I guess where I'm going with this is that, Mark, you brought this up early. This gives us some great, food for thought. Regarding, I used to be adamantly opposed to the parking meters in the past. I know this come up since before my time on the board, but we do have, I don't know if you wanted to look at the balance of perhaps encouraging people to use other modes of transportation in order, especially people in Shorewood, to get around. And those from outside of the district might not be able to, but so there might be other unintended positive impacts from that one. So I'll be open-minded about it, but I'll be quiet. I know I'm rambling and we have a long night ahead of us. So thank you. No actions required, right? So, okay.
Well, I just thank you for your time on this.
I would like to say that I typically don't support user fees, but moving the fire and protection, that cost to the water utility, I think is something that I could get behind. And I think that it is something that's within reach this year and reasonable, since it would require sooner action. I guess I'm curious if we could just get a sense from the board if that is something that we should ask staff to bring back for consideration, since it would require a July approval. And July isn't really that far away. So we're not asked to make a motion because it's not agended for that, but just do we have kind of a show of hands of interest in having it come before us? I know I do. Okay, so bring that back, and then the rest we will consider. I don't think we need to do all of them this year.
No, absolutely not.
Right.
President Blake?
Yes.
Sorry, one last question. Mark, I didn't see it in here, and since we had the alley discussion earlier, special assessments for alleys, was that an option that was kicked around?
No, that was not. We've had that discussion several times at the board, and typically we have that discussion every time we do an alley program. So the board can be adaptive spontaneously on those items when we do an alley program, whether or not to special assess or not. And the same thing applies to the sidewalk program. So that doesn't require any advanced contemplations. It's really a program by project consideration for the board.
Trustee Stokebrand.
I just had one quick question. If we thinking about the refuse utility, if we switch to a weight-based system, then would we need all new DPW trucks? Because right now they just pick up the garbage can, it goes into the truck, but you'd need to have a scale, wouldn't you? I just wonder if Leanne is.
There are a lot of different metrics that we'd have to work out, which is why that particular option is not something that would impact 2022. It would require a lot of conversation to decide what metric would be best for charges, for sustainability, for environmental impacts. So, weight based is one measure. The other measure is by the size of the cart that you have. That is a little more administratively friendly. So, lots of possibilities.
Thank you.
Thanks. That's a great question. Is there anyone in the in the public, members of the public that are here this evening that came for this issue and have comments to make at this time? We're not taking action, but since it was agended, if anyone came, I'd like to give them the option to speak.
I don't have anyone's hand raised at this time.
Okay. Thank you. All right, thank you. We get to move on to our last item under new business, which is 9F, consider amending the sunset clause contained in Village Code Section 319-11.2.2 titled Face Covering Requirements During COVID-19 Pandemic from May 17th, 2021. So this is before us. The mandate that we had in place expires today. Originally, we had brought this forward to consider extending it. Technically, we are still have that option. However, as everyone knows, the CDC has changed the guidelines just late last week. So there is this memo is in our packet, right? It wasn't separate. Okay.
Correct.
So Rebecca, could I pass it to you to present, or did we have a different plan that I'm forgetting?
No, in fact, I think you covered the highlights. So the board enacted an ordinance in January, and in January said we were going to come back on May 17th to review it to see if it required an amendment to extend for an additional period of time. And last Thursday, right before this meeting, the CDC had some changes in their guidelines.
Yes. So what is being asked of us tonight is to, I'm going to scroll through here.
I think at the onset, it's whether or not to extend the ordinance or to amend it to extend it, or whether the board should discontinue the ordinance and encourage the public to follow CDC guidelines.
Thank you. So thanks for highlighting that. So yeah, it's a very, very detailed memo. It has a lot of updates from different stakeholders. I guess I would like to entertain questions from the board. I'm guessing there are people in the audience this evening who would like to be heard on this matter as well. Trustee Ursink.
So, I'll probably cede to Melissa because I was just going to make a motion, but I was just going to go straight into it. I do believe that Whitefish Bay just discontinued their mask ordinance as one of the, I think originators of this, the topic with Trustee Carpenter at the time. I felt like there was a big need for it in the community at the time. We heard from our residents. We decided to take action, and we did so. And I think our community, above any other community, has really followed these guidelines and followed our leadership with masking and social distancing. And I give the community so much my respect for that, because it has not been easy. For instance, I hate to always go back to Little League, but we would travel with a Little League team, and Shorewood would go to a small town in Wisconsin, and we would literally be the only people there masked up. Everybody else was not masked, but Shorewoodians were the only people wearing masks. So, I mean, we took it seriously, and I think we did a really good job doing that. And I think we were a leader in the North Shore for masking. And I give my hats off to all the residents that were very active and engaged on this topic. And we have some really, really fantastic people here in the community, and that are very, very knowledgeable about this and very opinionated about the topic of masks. With speaking to a lot of those folks over the past, couple weeks, I think it's come a time where we have to make this difficult decision of either discontinuing this ordinance or continuing it. And I'm personally in favor of discontinuing the mandate in favor of the CDC guidelines. I think everybody out there is pretty, I think everybody can take safety into their own hands. We've talked to our business community, and the business community is I think at a point where they would like to manage their businesses themselves. I think people in Shorewood and a lot of the people that are coming here understand what our community, the standards for our community, and we'll continue to be safe regardless of our mandate or not. And I think a lot of people didn't even really realize we had a mandate after talking to people. So, so I'm in favor of discontinuing the mandate for, and to follow the CDC guidelines. And that would be the motion that I would eventually decide to make, but I will let everybody else speak before I make that motion.
Melissa?
I agree with a lot of that. And I would just say, we've encouraged people and asked people all along to trust the science and to listen to the CDC guidance. But one thing I don't want to get lost here is that the CDC guidance and recommendations are that people who are vaccinated can discontinue wearing masks. And we have a very important population, our kiddos under 12, who are not yet eligible for vaccines. And I know that's something that we need to have conversations with our friends on the school board and folks in the school district, because I am very concerned about kids under 12 who are not yet eligible to be vaccinated, and the risk of them being unmasked while at school. And not just those kiddos, but the educators and staff as well, who, would still be at risk of carrying the disease. And if they have kiddos at home, other people in their households who are unvaccinated due to, health issues that would prevent them from getting vaccines. So I just want to make sure that those people in our community who are not yet eligible for the vaccine are not lost in this conversation, that we want to make sure we are keeping things safe for our kiddos and educators and staff in our schools. And it sounds like, that's something that the district wants to continue. And I hope that is the case, but I just want to make sure we're having that part of the conversation, that while we are, getting, I think, if I remember correctly, we're getting close to like 90% of people in Shorewood with at least one dose, which is great. And I think that from a business perspective, I understand that it gets harder and harder to enforce. And, we certainly wouldn't want our small businesses and, to have to make those decisions of like, oh, hey, you have a vaccine or you don't. We trust that most people are getting vaccinated here, and that's great. But like I said, a lot of Shorewoodians are not eligible to get vaccinated yet, and I don't want to forget about them.
Okay. Now, Arthur, you just spoke, so I'm going to see if there's anybody else, but why don't you jump in and just.
No, I just wanted to follow up that I think Dr. Davis sent an email today. There's an email chain today that said that they were going to keep their masking policy at least through the end of the year. So that was my impression. Rebecca, I don't know if that was your impression as well, but from what I understand, the district is going to keep their masking policy in place, which is a big I mean, that would be, if that went away based on this mandate, then I would definitely keep the mandate in place, because I totally agree with you. But if the school district is planning to keep that keep their rules in place, then I think we can maybe relax our rules a little bit.
And I think the proposed motion definitely includes language of supporting the wearing of masks in areas where it's indicated, meaning high traffic areas, or where the organization or business has requested people to do so. And so we could be very clear about that, and we can express our support of that in written statements and communication channels within our community. Nathan, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to note that in the technical sense, you don't really need a motion, because if you do nothing, the existing ordinance will expire at midnight. But if you want, certainly there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to add that extra language about encouraging people to do X, Y, or Z, or follow CDC guidelines, that's perfectly acceptable. I just wanted to point out from a technical standpoint, it'll expire at midnight unless you take action to extend it.
Oh, thank you. Good distinction. Comments from other trustees? Wesley?
Yeah, I won't belabor the point, but I think there have been some very good points raised here. I mean, the other thing that went through my mind, and I turned this over a lot over the course of the weekend, is I think we want to remain aligned with the CDC guidance. We want to follow the science there. I think that if we were to do something completely different, it has a tendency to not only confuse people, but you might end up with situations that got very tense very quickly, just in terms of people not understanding what the expectations are when you have kind of, I assume Milwaukee's going to do something, that aligns with CDC. Arthur, I think you mentioned Whitefish Bay has already done so. I would assume that's going to be the prevailing standard, just the suggestion that we follow CDC guidance, which is kind of what you want to see. You want to see a centralized set of guidelines that people know and expect to follow, and compliance will be a lot better that way in terms of, because people know and have the expectation. So I guess without belaboring the point, I do like the fact that if we recommend following the CDC guidance, it's going to likely be consistent with our surrounding communities and probably most of the country. So I think that's a benefit as well.
Thank you. Yeah, Milwaukee already took that step of following CDC guidelines, aligning with that. And we received a couple of emails requesting that we extend it. I think it was, less than 5. And I guess I would rather work to support businesses and organizations to continue requesting masks in their environments and support people to follow those requests, rather than extending the mandate for everyone and going against CDC guidelines. Tammy, did you want to say something?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I will say that it's been quite a year, guys, and I'm elated that this is the discussion we're having now, instead of the one that we had a year ago around this. I am also happy that we have leadership at the federal level, and the state level has been doing a much better job as well, because as we all remember, about a year ago, there was denial that there was even a virus. What's it called? The supply of vaccinations in the state of Wisconsin and in Milwaukee County and regionally has outweighed the demand for it. So I understand that the youngest, as Melissa had mentioned before, are not all eligible for the vaccination. However, the immunocompromised, the older, the people who are at the highest risk of fatality, all are able to get it free. And I would be more inclined, and it sounds like the wave here is to let this ordinance sunset. I am 100% in support of that. And instead of going around and, we did a nice job. We had an unenforceable ordinance, okay, in Shorewood, and it worked really well. And we had a lot of criticism for that too. Now, next step, if we're going to concentrate our efforts somewhere, I would like to see us focus on getting people who are able to get vaccinated, getting more information to those individuals. Also, who knows if this does slide back and herd immunity is not reached. We've done it before. I'm not saying that I would want to use that as a solution, but I think we have some merit here in with the stick here, meaning that we can fall back. We can have stricter rules than the neighboring municipalities. We've done it before. We'll probably do it again in a variety of elements. But the data is not supporting that need for this right now. So, I think it was you, Kathy, that came up with May 17th. Well done on that selection of a date back in January. This is very timely. I'm also happy that we don't have to rescind an ordinance because Nathan could probably attest to this. I guess we would be immune from liability, but it's a lot easier to not renew something than it is to take something away, especially when it comes to public health and safety. So I'm ready to also vote for,
And the plane.
yep. Oh, wait, there it is. Okay, ready to go and vote for this. Or I don't even know, we don't even have to vote. I would be, sorry, I'm going to say this. I would not move to discontinue the ordinance, the suggested motion in here. I would just move to continue our educational efforts and align with the CDC's guidelines, as well as work with the ICC, the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, other municipalities to ensure that health and safety are paramount, and revisit this topic in the near future. So.
Second.
Okay. Before we have discussion, I just did want to, I'm guessing there are people in the audience that came for this item, and if you would wish to be heard at this time, I would take those comments. All right, seeing no hands. Quiet group tonight.
The budget for amount.
Is so any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. No, seeing none. Can we do show of hands? Let's just call the roll. Okay.
I can do that. All right. Trustee Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Baldoff.
Aye.
Trustee Backhorst.
Aye.
Trustee Arndorfer.
Aye.
Trustee Stokebrand.
Aye.
Trustee Ursink.
Aye.
President McKay.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right. My cat knocked over my agenda. Okay, so that concludes new business for this evening. We move on to item number 10, reports of village officials. Village president is first. I know it looks like a long list, but these are our quick items. Item number 1, we have initiative and prioritization for 2021 and 2022. There's a memo in your packet outlining the context for this item. Typically, this is the time of year where we would be doing prioritization so that we're not going in too many directions at one time. However, because the previous boards invested in really high quality studies and analyses that now need to be operationalized, we get to be an implementation board. And so what that means is we do the work necessary to implement the recommendations that come forth in those studies. And that work happens at the committee level and then is brought to village board to be approved and take action on. And then we get updates on progress throughout the year. If there are additional items that trustees are interested in or that we feel need to be addressed, I think that we can monitor those and handle it in a collaborative manner. And if it becomes unmanageable to do so, then we would bring it forward to the board for another solution. But that's what I would propose at this time, which gets us some time back, because normally we'd be spending hours prioritizing, but it's really pretty clear. Rebecca included a list of items that have either been completed in the past or are in progress. And if you review those lists, there are some pretty exciting things that are in progress, I think up to about 5. And so that really does kind of take care of our time that we have moving forward. So the next item is the ICC report. The county executive, Crowley, addressed the ICC last week. I wanted to let you know that he gave a shout out to Shorewood for extending TID 1 for affordable housing funds. And that was the only municipality that he shouted out to. And the other affordable housing project that just got started on Walnut YA in the city of Milwaukee. So there were 2 mentioned, but I just want to point out that we were, the one municipality that got the shout out. They are starting a strategic team around building diverse and inclusive communities and invited everyone in the ICC to join. We were the first municipality to join. So they are excited to meet with us. We actually beat them to the punch. They don't have their strategy together yet, but we're going to meet with them and also invite the diversity committee of the ICC to join us. That once we get an idea of where we will align our work and what that looks like moving forward, we will open it up to all kinds of people to participate. So stay tuned for that. Item 3, North Shore Fire Board. They rotate their appointments for officers, and so Shorewood is in line to be secretary this year, and then VP next year, and president in 2023. So I timed it right with this term. Keep you posted on that. Let's see, League Chief of Executive Summer Workshop is August 19th and 20th. I will look into how many people we can send. I am the chief executive and I am able to go, and I would like to go, but I would also like to take somebody else if able, just to that we're developing leadership across the organization. So I'll look into that. Thank you for Trustee Bachhorst for calling it to our attention on those announcements. Update on Shored moving forward and Shored Solidarity Network open letter to the board regarding police priorities. So this, the letter that we received that was read into the record on the May 3rd meeting, it did include language around us taking, putting it on an agenda and taking action on it. I am not going to do that. Instead, what I would like to do is consider this letter prioritization from 2 community partners, a combined group that is working as a police accountability group. I think it's fantastic feedback, and it lists items that are related to the findings of the police study and related to the work of the Public Safety Committee. I met with Chief Nimmer and we aligned the letter with the results of the police organizational study that Chief Nimmer had outlined in a spreadsheet in terms of timeline and progress towards those items. And for the first 3, we're pretty aligned, other than, the 60-day timeline, we're a little off on that. However, those things are scheduled for steady progress and to be brought back to committee and or village board within the next month and a half or so, given our meeting schedule. So, and then the last 2 items around staffing are much larger discussions that we don't have scheduled right now. And so I updated the group with that. It doesn't mean that we won't schedule them for discussion. It's just that they are larger discussions. And so it's not something that we can just toss to Public Safety Committee to consider. So that's the update at that point. And I do believe that items will be coming, the Public Safety Committee will give an update to the village board in June. And that might be a nice opportunity to invite our community partners and the HRC and just create an intentional point of contact around progress related to the police study implementation. Let's see, timeline for resuming in-person meetings. So since the CDC has said that we can be in a room together, if unmasked if you're vaccinated and masked if you're not vaccinated, we don't really have a legal leg to stand on to extend our virtual meetings. So I think I think Rebecca, you sent us an email around that, right? Or did it just go to me?
I believe it just went to you.
Oh, well, wouldn't it be great if I pulled that up right away? So anyway, in conferring with staff, including our village attorney, the guidance really is to, if there is not a pandemic related reason to meet virtually, which there is not according to the CDC, then it is recommended that we move back to in-person meetings. So that is the direction that we're going to go towards, and we'll have additional information Am I forgetting anything, Rebecca, relating to that?
Nope, I think you covered it.
All right, and the final item under my village president report is a proclamation for Public Works Week. And I want to cue that up. Because we appreciate Public Works. And if it weren't a pandemic, I think we might be getting a barbecue. There's a really fabulous barbecuer in the Public Works Department. So we will have to defer that and make it happen another time because it's a really fun event. So the proclamation reads, whereas Public Works services provided in the village of Shorewood are an integral part of, oh, you know what? I'm going to toss this to Trustee Ursink as Chair of Public Works. Would you read the proclamation? I'm sorry.
I would be happy to. Thank you so much.
It is
Fantastic.
page 213 of the packet.
What an honor. I've got it right
Sorry,
here.
I didn't tee it up sooner, but that's how we work here.
That is quite right. This would be a complete honor. So thank you. Okay, so the proclamation reads, whereas Public Works service provided in the village of Shorewood are an integral part of our residents' everyday lives, and whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works programs, including sewer and water systems, park and forestry maintenance, fleet and facility maintenance, refuse collection, street maintenance and repair, traffic and streetlight system maintenance, and winter operations. And whereas the health and safety and comfort of the residents of the village of Shorewood greatly depends on these facilities and services, and whereas the quality and effectiveness of these facilities, as well as their planning, design, and construction is vital, dependent upon the effort and skill of Public Works personnel, and whereas the efficiency and qualified and dedicated personnel who staff the village of Shorewood's Department of Public Works is greatly influenced by residents' attitude and understanding of the importance of their work. Now, therefore, I, Ann McCullough McCaig, President President of the Village of Shorewood, Milwaukee County, Wisconsin, do hereby proclaim the week of May 16th, 2001 as National Public Work Week in the Village of Shorewood. And I call upon all the residents and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works and to recognize contributions which public works officials make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. Dated at Shorewood, Wisconsin, this 17th day of May, 2021. Yay. Thanks for letting me read that, Ann. That was great.
Muted.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to reports of village trustees. Trustee Bockhorst.
Thank you. So I will reiterate, I would encourage any and all of you to participate in the League 101, Government 101. I know they have it virtually, there'll be in person. Even though we think we know it all sometimes, any of us will attend this and learn a lot, including you, Sarah. I'm just kidding. You actually could teach it. But so I would say that. And then the second thing is I attended the, I do this every year, Madison Night in Milwaukee. It's hosted by the MMAC. This year it was actually in person at St. Kate's. It was a much smaller group. It's usually at the Italian Community Center. It's a great networking opportunity. Also, it's an opportunity for Milwaukee and Milwaukee area to kind of show off to the decision makers who are in Madison, right at the state level. So Crowley was there, a bunch of individuals from Milwaukee and a lot of great businesses, and they had free COVID vaccinations as well as antibody tests on site and instant results. So that was quite fascinating. But I'll get you guys this information for next year because I think having us there as local representatives is really great for not only the city, but also it's an opportunity for you to speak with. For example, I spoke with Kuyenga and Voss and a whole bunch of individuals that you don't generally run into in the Milwaukee area. but when you're having cocktails and conversation, and you can really get some business done. So that's it.
Thank you. Any other trustees with reports at this time? Trustee Ursink.
So, I'm not sure if I mentioned this at the last meeting, but I was able to take a walking tour with one of our Shorewood police officers, Officer Miller. And it was just a fantastic opportunity to get the perspective of our officers and what they go through on a daily basis, and how they navigate not only our village, but the residents, and just getting his perspective, and how I think a lot of the officers right now feel, I feel like the morale is down. I feel like they don't feel like Shorewood necessarily supports them right now. And, so I do think if some of the newer trustees, or some of the trustees that haven't taken the opportunity to do that, to take a walking tour with an officer, it's just fantastic. Opportunity to see, to walk in their shoes a little bit, to see how they interact. I know we stopped in several businesses, and the officer just knew all sorts of customers at Walgreens, and had personal conversations with just really random customers, and it was great to see our officers interact with the community, because that's something I feel like maybe they could do more. They could integrate themselves a little bit more into our community, into our events, and it's something that I think there could be a big advantage for our officers to do that, and maybe they do that. I don't see it as much, but I do think they do a fantastic job, and it's worth your while to just set some time aside, email Chief Nimmer and try to set up a time to do that with a police officer. It'll go a long way for you, and as well as the officer. The other thing I wanted to mention is Trustee Stokbrand and I also were part of the EDI training with Sam Coleman and other department heads. I think that's we're starting to get to a point where the program is kind of culminating here. In June will be a fairly big month for us we're planning a 4-hour kind of meeting to sit down to go over everything. Some proposals that we'd like to bring to the village board, and some direction for staff. So looking forward to really digging into that, and to seeing where that goes. So it's been a fantastic program so far.
Anyone else?
I'm doing the walk with the officer on Friday. Maybe it'll be right along, who knows? So, and that was after you told me what a great experience it was for you. So thank you for that.
Okay.
So I'm just looking for a motion to, oh, I'm sorry, we're not at that point. Sorry.
Do you have a village manager's report?
No report. Thank you.
Okay. Well, really quickly, Trustee Baldoff and I met with Chair Sharvita Parker of the HRC, and Tyler and Rebecca to recap what the HRC has been working on, and how they'd like to align in the next year across the organization with the different areas of equity and diversity and inclusion. And we came up with some ideas that we're going to pursue, and anyway, I thought it was a really energizing meeting, and I really appreciated the time taken. So
I concur.
Great. All right, thanks. A lot of work. And so we need a motion to, yes.
Sorry, I have one item for future consideration.
Excellent.
Sorry, I know it's late, but because with the prioritization changes, this is something that we've prioritized, but it just hasn't quite gotten to the top of the list, and I think it's really, really important. So I was just going to, I guess I'll get tired, so I'll try to think of a good way to word the motion. I move to direct the Community and Business Relations Committee, I think that's the right place, to work on the Welcoming Village Ordinance as its time permits. I don't know if I can make that stronger, but I don't have the schedule in front of me.
I'll second it.
Excellent. Thank you, Trustee Warren. I support that. All those in favor? Show of hands. Okay, it looks 7-0. Thank you very much. And you don't need to apologize for getting good work on the schedule.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it doesn't get lost.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, any other items of future consideration? I think I had one. Do we need to put the fire in? No, that we already took care of that. Okay. Do we have a motion to go into closed session?
President McKeag.
Yes.
Oh, did you want to alert people to the, there's a planning commission meeting at the end of the month and the special meeting?
Oh, I did.
Oh, I missed it. Oh,
No, I did want to do that. So
Oh.
could you do it for me? Because it sounds like you've got it at the tip of your tongue.
Oh, well, yes, there's a planning commission meeting on the, what is it, the 4th Tuesday? Is that right?
May 25th?
Thank you. Next Tuesday, a week from tomorrow. And then the following Tuesday will be a special meeting, June 1st, I believe. Because the Board of Appeals, I think it was a 3-to-1 vote, remanded the decision of the planning commission back to the planning commission. There will be 3 new members on the planning commission, President McKeag and I and Josh Pollock, I believe. So anyway, so just getting that out there because I know there was a lot of interest in the whole proposed development and the parking exemption. So we're being transparent here, at least, and notifying all of you of that right now. So that's all I have around that.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to go into closed session at this time?
I'm
moved.
Second.
Got to read the whole thingy by state statute, I think.
I got it in front of me if you want me to read it.
Do it.
That'd be great.
I move to adjourn into closed session pursuant to 1985 1G to confer with legal counsel on strategy regarding pending litigation regarding the estate of Jonah Marciniak.
Second.
Okay, it's a roll call vote.
Yes. Trustee Arndorfer,
Aye.
trustee Stokebrand,
Aye.
trustee Waldoff,
Aye.
trustee Ursink,
Aye.
trustee Warren,
Aye.
trustee Backhorst,
Yes.
President McKeag.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. The closed session is on a separate link.
All right, and we will go into closed session at 10:27. We'll see you there right away, everyone. No breaks.